life lived behind a psychological wall, a fortress of predictability built brick by carefully placed brick, meticulously defended against the elements of change, chaos, and genuine self-discovery. This fortress is not just a home, it is a prison, constructed entirely from the material of security, and the moment a window opens, showing the boundless, terrifying landscape of true freedom outside, the inhabitant doesn't feel desire, they feel terror. Carl Jung, the cartographer of the soul, understood this profound and devastating paradox. Freedom is not simply a gift, it is a burden of ultimate responsibility, and for those who have consciously or unconsciously traded their potential for the dull certainty of safety, the sight of liberation becomes the most terrifying specter imaginable. We are not talking about physical danger or the simple anxiety of a new job. We are dissecting the existential gravity of a life choice that settles deep into the marrow of the psyche. The vast majority of human beings, when presented with the brutal complexity of authentic existence, the necessity of continuous choice, the certainty of suffering, the requirement to define oneself in the absence of external guarantees, will invariably choose the known pain over the unknown potential. They opt for the salaried cage, the relationship of convenience, the ideological blanket that promises to protect them from the harsh, cold wind of having to think, act, and become entirely for themselves. This choice, this subtle surrender of the self in favor of the herd, is what creates the foundation for the psychological terror that Jung observed. Before we delve into the intricate architecture of this defensive terror, I want you to consider the geographical and psychological space you occupy right now. We are traversing some of the deepest and most challenging territory of the human mind, and understanding where you are starting this journey matters greatly. In which city, in which corner of the world, are you currently confronting this brutal truth about the cost of safety? Let that thought settle as we proceed, because the principles of the shadow and the fear of individuation transcend every border and every culture. The first fundamental element of this terror is the recognition of the unlived life. When an individual commits to safety, they are not just selecting a stable path, they are simultaneously rejecting an infinite number of alternative selves. They sign a pact with the conventional, sacrificing the heroic dimension of their own existence. Over years, this sacrificed self does not vanish, it retreats into the unconscious, becoming what Jung called the shadow. This shadow is not just repressed evil, it is the reservoir of untapped potential, the daring choices never made, the creativity never expressed, the passion carefully stifled by practicality. When the safe person encounters someone embodying true, reckless, genuine freedom, an artist, an entrepreneur, a traveler, someone living a life defined by their own internal compass rather than societal consensus, they are not simply seeing another person. They are seeing a mirror reflecting the vibrant, aggressive life force they themselves murdered years ago. This reflection is agonizing. It triggers immediate, overwhelming psychic pain. This pain is the primary source of the terror. It is the silent internal screaming of the self that was abandoned for comfort. The person who chose safety can tolerate their comfortable misery until they are confronted by the tangible evidence that their sacrifice was perhaps unnecessary, that the freedom they deemed impossible or too dangerous was in fact entirely attainable. Therefore, the person anchored in safety must engage in a constant, aggressive psychological warfare to protect their choice. They must, for their own sanity, convince themselves that the free person is either foolish, reckless, morally corrupt, or destined for spectacular failure. This is not casual judgment, it is a profound, neurotic necessity. If the free person succeeds, the entire edifice of the safe person's life, the 30 years of grinding conformity, the sacrifices, the compromises, collapses into a meaningless tragedy. The stability they purchased with their soul is revealed to be a mere illusion, a gilded cage that held them captive while true life happened elsewhere. This leads directly to the second element of the terror, the overwhelming weight of responsibility. Freedom, as Jung understood it, is synonymous with absolute responsibility. If your life is safe and predictable, you have outsourced your responsibility to a system. The government, the corporation, the family structure, the established dogma. When things go wrong, the safe person can easily find an external villain. The economy failed me. The boss mistreated me. My spouse misunderstood me. The blame is diffuse, external, and manageable. The structure provides an alibi for failure. Freedom shatters this alibi. The truly free person recognizes that they are the sole architect of their outcomes. Every success is their own, but crucially, every failure is also entirely their own creation. There is no one to blame, no system to indict, no dogma to hide behind. This is the existential vertigo that terrifies the safety seeker. They fear not just failure, but the realization that they alone are responsible for the totality of their subjective reality. They recoil from the abyss of choice. They prefer the mild, continuous suffering of predictable obedience because it alleviates them from the intolerable pressure of original authorship. They would rather follow a bad map than draw their own, even if the bad map leads them over a spiritual cliff. The safe person often develops a rigid moral and intellectual framework designed to neutralize freedom wherever it appears. They become the vigilant guardians of conformity, the cultural police, the people who constantly warn against stepping outside the lines. When they see someone embracing freedom, whether it is a radical career shift, an unconventional lifestyle, or an honest emotional expression, they don't see courage, they see irresponsibility. This judgment is a projection, a defense mechanism where the safe person attributes their own terror and suppressed desires onto the free individual, thereby justifying their own confinement. They are, in essence, trying to pull the free person back into the cage not out of malice but out of a desperate need for validation. If you are also trapped, their unconscious whispers, then my imprisonment is normal, perhaps even wise. This mechanism operates at a subtle, pervasive level. Observe the conversations in any corporate setting, any family gathering, any social group built on assumed stability. The moment someone mentions a drastic, self-directed change, leaving a high-paying job to pursue a creative endeavor, ending a long-term, unfulfilling relationship, moving across the world, the air shifts. The safe people mobilize. They offer warnings couched as concern. Be practical. Think of the consequences. That's irresponsible. These warnings are rarely about the practicalities. They are psychological bombs dropped to protect their own internal narrative of caution and sacrifice. They are expressing their own fear of the unknown, projecting it onto the object of their suppressed envy. The terrifying realization is that if the free person thrives, the safe person's reality principle is invalidated. Carl Jung articulated the process of individuation as the lifelong psychological journey toward integrating the conscious and unconscious, becoming a whole, unique individual, the very definition of true freedom. But this journey demands confrontation with the shadow, with chaos, with the dissolution of the ego's comfortable certainties. The safe person has actively resisted individuation. They have chosen to remain in a state of comfortable collective mediocrity, defined by their roles, parent, employee, consumer, rather than their unique essence. The moment true freedom beckons, it demands that they dismantle the false self they have painstakingly built. This false self is the identity constructed from external expectations, what society, parents, or partners told them they should be. Dismantling this structure feels like dying. It feels like stepping off a cliff because the safe person has internalized the belief that their security is their identity. The anxiety of freedom is the anxiety of realizing that beneath the layers of professional titles, comfortable habits, and predictable opinions, there is a fundamental, terrifying void. This void is not empty. It is pregnant with possibility. But to the person accustomed to rigid definition, the absence of structure is the definition of annihilation. They prefer the known boundaries of their miserable identity to the unbound potential of their true self. Consider the role of authentic suffering. The pursuit of safety is often an attempt to preempt or avoid suffering. The safe person believes that if they follow the rules, obey the system, and minimize risk, they will minimize pain. But life, according to Jungian thought, guarantees suffering. The choice is never if we will suffer, but how we will suffer. The free person chooses suffering that is meaningful, the struggle of creation, the pain of growth, the sorrow of loss experienced fully. This suffering is the crucible of self-development. The safe person chooses suffering that is meaningless, the dull ache of stagnation, the creeping resentment of compromise, the silent despair of mediocrity. This suffering is often masked by comfort, numbed by consumption, and denied through constant distraction. When they see the free person embracing the visible, intense, but meaningful suffering of their path, The safe person is horrified. They mistake this necessary struggle for proof of failure. What they don't realize is that their own life, though externally stable, is a monument to chronic internal spiritual atrophy, a slow death of the soul that is far more terrifying than the acute pain of genuine effort. The intensity of the safe person's rejection of freedom is proportional to the depth of their commitment to safety. This rejection manifests as active sabotage, moral condemnation, and intellectual distortion. They will cite statistics about failure, share cautionary tales, and elevate caution to the highest virtue. They create an ideological shield against the possibility of radical self-determination. This is the defense of mediocrity. It is the collective insistence that nothing exceptional is possible, or if it is only for the reckless few, never for the sensible, decent majority who choose the sensible path. This defense protects them from the knowledge that their sensible path is actually the most dangerous one, the path that guarantees they will reach the end of their lives, regretting not the things they did, but the things they never dared to try. The terror, therefore, is rooted in the confrontation with the self that should have been. It is the inescapable realization that safety is a form of spiritual suicide. The individual has, in effect, placed a massive psychic mortgage on their future self, borrowing comfort now at the price of existential debt later. And when that debt collector, in the form of a successful, free person or a quiet moment of self-reflection, finally knocks, the terror is complete. The safe life, built to minimize risk, is revealed to be the greatest risk of all, the risk of living unlived. We see this dynamic playing out in every layer of society, from the microaggressions in a boardroom against an innovative subordinate, to the macro-political movements that seek authoritarian certainty over democratic messy freedom. The underlying psychological impulse is the same, the preference for a strong external father figure, be it a boss, a government, or a rigid ideology, to dictate the boundaries, thereby relieving the individual of the terrifying responsibility of self-governance and moral ambiguity. They want to be told what to do, what to believe, and who to hate, because true sovereignty requires independent moral calculation, which is exhausting and dangerous. The final, devastating layer of this terror is the fear of internal solitude. Freedom forces one into solitude, not necessarily physical isolation, but psychological separation from the herd. Individuation is a solitary path. The safe person derives identity and validation from belonging. They need the collective gaze and the collective approval to confirm their existence. When the free person walks away from the conventional path, they demonstrate that validation can come from within, from the internal authority of the self. This act of self-reliance is an indictment of the safe person's dependence. They fear the silence of internal authority, the echoing emptiness that follows when external voices are shut off. They fear being alone with the voice of the true self they have suppressed for so long. They cling desperately to the noise of the crowd, the din of social media, the chatter of office gossip, anything to drown out the quiet, devastating realization that they have spent their life conforming to an external template that was never meant for them. The great psychological cost of safety is that it makes the individual incapable of handling true freedom when it appears, not because freedom is difficult, but because the machinery of self-suppression is so entrenched. The fear is a defense mechanism protecting the fragile narrative of the safe life. The terror of freedom is the terror of having to confront the mirror and see, for the first time, the stranger staring back, the person who chose safety and abandoned their own heroic journey. And this foundation of terror is precisely what we must understand before we can proceed to dissect the specific mechanisms by which the safety seeker actively attempts to destroy the freedom of others. The profound truth is that the choice of safety is an initial psychological act of violence against the self, and as with all violence, it requires constant energy to sustain the illusion of peace. The safe person is perpetually exhausted, not by work, but by the relentless effort required to keep the prison walls from crumbling and the terrifying sight of the unlived life at bay. The exploration of such deep-seated psychological defense mechanisms is crucial for anyone striving for authenticity. The insights we uncover today can transform the way you view your own choices and the reactions of those around you. We are dedicated to providing the detailed, unflinching truth about the forces that shape human behavior. If the distinction between meaningless suffering in the name of safety and meaningful struggle in the name of freedom has resonated deeply with you, prove your engagement right now. In the comments below, share a single, powerful phrase that captures the essence of this internal conflict. A phrase that separates the courage of freedom from the comfort of the cage. We are building a community defined by those who are ready to face the truth, not run from it. Show us that you are here for the depth, not the distraction. Join this journey into the architecture of the human soul. Subscribe to ensure you receive the full map of this extraordinary psychological landscape. Hit that like button and commit to the ongoing pursuit of competence and wisdom, guaranteeing that this powerful insight is never lost. And prepare yourself. In the next part, we will move from the foundation of terror to the active mechanisms of rejection. We will dissect how the safety seeker actively sabotages and destroys freedom in the lives of others, detailing the specific tactics of projection, envy, and moral inversion. Do not miss this essential continuation of the argument. The deeper psychological traps of conformity are about to be laid bare. The cage is gilded, its bars polished by the relentless hands of routine. Outside, the vista is limitless, intimidating, and wild. This is the paradox that Carl Jung identified, the secret terror that paralyzes modern humanity. The fear not of bondage, but of liberation itself. We stand before the open door of freedom, clutching the keys, and the tremor we feel is not excitement, but profound dread. Why? Because the chains of safety, however restrictive, come prepackaged with an absolution of responsibility. They offer a simple, profound, and utterly destructive bargain. Trade your potential for predictability. The moment we embrace true freedom, that bargain is voided and we are left naked before the indifferent gaze of the cosmos, entirely responsible for every shadow we cast and every path we fail to take. This deep-seated reluctance to step into the sun of self-determination is not merely a social preference. It is a profound psychological defense mechanism, intricately woven into the structure of the psyche. Safety is the ultimate buffer against the existential anxieties that Jung believed defined the human condition. When we choose the known over the unknown, we are choosing to outsource our internal conflicts. We tell ourselves, I cannot be truly happy because of the system, because of the bureaucracy, because of my circumstances, because of the limits placed upon me. This externalization provides tremendous comfort. It permits us to maintain the comforting illusion of our own inherent goodness and capability, while blaming the external structure for our failures to achieve it. Imagine the relief that comes with knowing that the ceiling of your potential is fixed by the institution you serve. The salary cap is set by the market, or the boundaries of your moral life are dictated by tradition or dogma. This lack of choice is paradoxically restful. It requires minimal spiritual energy. The psychological weight of a life fully chosen, a life where every decision is a definitive statement about who you are and who you refuse to be, is absolutely crushing to the unprepared psyche. Safety, therefore, becomes the psychological anesthetic against the chronic pain of existential choice. Before we proceed deeper into the architecture of this terror, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the massive collective that is exploring these intense ideas with us. We are discussing the deepest fears of the human spirit, fears that span continents and cultures. Tell me right now, what city are you watching this from? Let us see the true reach of this psychological conversation. The terror deepens when we examine the concept of individuation, the ultimate Jungian goal, which is fundamentally synonymous with freedom. Individuation is the process by which a person becomes an integrated, whole and indivisible self, distinct from the collective unconscious and the social norm. This process requires the dissolution of the persona, the carefully constructed mask we present to the world, and the confrontation with the shadow. Safety is the fortress built specifically to protect the persona and keep the shadow in the dungeon. The persona is terrified of freedom, because freedom demands authenticity. The persona thrives on external approval and predictable social reinforcement. It needs its office title, its consistent salary, its neighborhood status, its political affiliation, its predictable routines, all the external scaffolding that tells it, you are acceptable, you belong. When freedom arrives, it rips away the scaffolding. It demands that the individual stand naked and ask, who am I when stripped of my uniform, my title, and my comfortable niche? For the person who has chosen safety, the persona has become the self. The mask has fused to the face. The thought of losing this social armor induces a panic bordering on psychic death. To be free is to be socially visible and vulnerable, to invite judgment not on the performance, but on the core essence. And the collective, the very source of the comfort they crave, becomes the first executioner. Jung observed the overwhelming gravitational pull of the collective unconscious, the inertia of the herd. When one chooses freedom, they are not just leaving a job or a town. They are committing a treasonous act against the collective. The collective rewards conformity with safety and punishes independence with ostracization. The choice of freedom implies that the collective path, the safe path, is insufficient, perhaps even fraudulent. This is an insult the herd cannot tolerate. The individual who attempts to individuate must endure the relentless scorn and psychological pressure from those who remain safely embedded in the collective. They are labeled selfish, foolish, reckless, or arrogant. This social pressure acts as a powerful deterrent, a psychic immune response designed to pull the stray back into the predictable body of the group. The terrifying equation is this: safety offers anonymity and guaranteed mediocrity. Freedom offers the chance at extraordinary meaning, but with the high probability of social isolation and existential failure. For most, the comfort of predictable mediocrity, validated by millions of peers, is infinitely preferable to the frightening possibility of meaningful singularity achieved in isolation. The fear is not the struggle itself, but the fear of being alone in the struggle, without the shared misery of the collective to cushion the fall. This leads us to the shadow, the repository of everything we repress, deny, or hate about ourselves. Our selfish ambitions, our darker desires, our genuine resentment, our unlived lives. Safety acts as a sophisticated system of psychological repression. Routine, bureaucracy, and the demands of the comfortable life are all excellent distractions. They keep us so busy managing the external environment that we never have the time, the space, or the psychological courage to turn inward and face the inner demon. Freedom, however, is a forced encounter with the interior landscape. When the external demands dissipate, the internal noise rushes in. The person who chooses freedom, who dedicates themselves to self-discovery, inevitably has to open the door to the dungeon of the shadow. And what they find there is profoundly terrifying. They do not just find their small failings. They find the true scope of their own capacity for malice, for destruction, for utter self-sabotage. They realize that their greatest enemy is not the system, but the unintegrated monster within. Safety promises that if you follow the rules, the monster stays locked up. It gives the illusion of moral purity through external compliance. Freedom says, the monster is you, and if you want to be whole, you must integrate it. You must understand its energy, its desires, and learn to harness it rather than pretend it doesn't exist. This integration is terrifying because it requires the admission of one's own darkness, the admission that the nice, conformist persona was merely a flimsy shield. The terror of freedom is the terror of ultimate agency. Safety implies a limited range of potential experience. If you are safe, your sorrows are standard issue. A bad boss, a mortgage payment, an annoying commute. These are manageable, universally relatable afflictions. They create a sense of shared, comfortable suffering. Freedom, by contrast, implies an infinite range of potential failure. If you fail in freedom, you fail spectacularly, uniquely, and entirely on your own terms. Your misery is artisanal, bespoke, and isolating. You cannot blame the bureaucracy for your failed business venture. You must blame your own poor judgment. You cannot blame society for your lack of passion. You must confront your own fear of commitment. This weight of personal consequence is often unbearable. Many people revert to safety not because they genuinely believe in the collective path, but because they prefer the predictable, shared grief of the cage to the unpredictable, self-inflicted wounds of the open field. The path of the liberated individual is often marked by self-doubt, profound loneliness, and the constant awareness that every choice carries monumental weight. Consider the role of emotional repression in maintaining safety. Safe structures, rigid jobs, dogmatic beliefs, emotionally distant relationships are masterful at regulating and minimizing powerful disruptive emotions. Anger is channeled into workplace grievances. Grief is managed by rote rituals. Joy is contained within prescribed social activities. These systems prevent the eruption of raw, untamed feeling. Freedom is inherently chaotic and emotionally volatile. To be fully free is to be fully alive, and to be fully alive is to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, often without external regulation. The liberated individual must learn to tolerate intense anxiety, profound sadness, and ecstatic, terrifying joy. They must become their own emotional regulator. For the person accustomed to the bland, sterilized emotional environment of safety, this uncontrolled emotionality feels like madness. It feels like the descent into psychological chaos. The choice of safety is, at its heart, an attempt to prevent the ego from encountering what Jung called the numinous, the direct, overwhelming experience of the vast, chaotic, and meaningful mystery of existence. The numinous is disruptive. It shatters the established order. It reveals the smallness of the ego and the vastness of the unconscious. Safety is built on predictability and rational order. It maintains the illusion that the world is entirely knowable and manageable. Freedom, however, throws the individual into the great stream of life, where chaos reigns, synchronicity occurs, and meaning emerges not from logical deduction, but from profound, often painful, personal revelation. This exposure to genuine mystery is terrifying to the rational mind that has sought refuge in safety. The ultimate terror of freedom, the one that seals the cage shut for so many, is the fear that after all the effort, after facing the shadow and enduring the collective scorn, they might discover that they simply do not have what it takes. They fear that their true self, the self liberated from the persona, is weak, incompetent, or inherently flawed. Safety guarantees a minimum acceptable level of performance because the structure supports you. Freedom offers no such guarantee. It is the ultimate test, and the person who chooses safety often does so because they secretly harbor the profound and debilitating belief that they are not worthy of the vastness of their own potential. They fear the answer to the ultimate question: if I give myself every chance to succeed, will I still fail? And they know that if they fail in freedom, there is no one else left to blame. The ultimate terror is the fear of self-discovery, the fear of the truth of one's own inherent limitations, and the profound isolating realization that the safety they clung to was merely a delaying tactic against the inevitable confrontation with their own fate. This confrontation is what freedom demands, and this demand is what drives so many back into the comfortable servitude of the predictable life. We have delved deep into the architecture of fear that Jung outlined, examining how the persona, the shadow, and the demands of the collective act as psychological jailers. You have invested your time and your focus into understanding this complex dynamic, and that commitment to depth is exactly what separates those who seek true understanding from those who settle for surface platitudes. Because you understand the gravity of these concepts, I want to give you a powerful affirmation to carry forward. If this discussion has resonated with the core of your internal struggle, if it has illuminated the hidden motivations behind your own choices, type this phrase in the comments right now: "My freedom is worth the chaos." Affirm that courage, confirm that insight, and let that declaration connect you with everyone else who is on this terrifying but necessary journey towards self-actualization. And because you are dedicated to transformation, ensure you are subscribed and hit the like button. This isn't just about supporting the channel. It is about guaranteeing that the algorithms prioritize content that challenges you, that pushes you toward depth, and that helps you build the internal framework necessary for true sovereignty. Do not let the digital collective obscure the knowledge you need. The terror of freedom is one half of the equation. We must now turn to the mechanisms of surrender. In our next installment, we will explore the precise methods by which the psyche negotiates its own bondage, how we actively conspire against our own liberation, and what the consequences of that ultimate refusal truly are. Stay engaged, because the final piece of this Jungian puzzle will reveal the path out of the gilded cage. This is the final chapter, the consequence. We have spent time dissecting the psychology of retreat, the comfort of the collective, and the structural defenses the psyche builds against the terrible gravity of choice. Now we must face the terrifying climax, the moment the architecture of safety collapses, not from external threat but from internal pressure. The illusion of safety, meticulously constructed over decades of conscious avoidance and deliberate submission, eventually turns on its architect. It becomes a fortress without exits, a perfect, sterile prison where nothing bad can happen because nothing can happen at all. This is the Jungian reckoning, the point where the unlived life demands payment. The man who chose safety over freedom thought he was securing peace. He believed he was signing a contract for stability, a guaranteed life free from suffering and uncertainty. But what he actually signed was a lease on a slow death. Because life, by its very nature, is chaotic, expansive, and dangerous. By sterilizing his environment, by eliminating all risk, the man did not eliminate danger. He merely redirected it. The danger that should have manifested as external challenges, career risks, relational vulnerability, philosophical leaps, now manifests internally as neurosis, resentment, and a profound, bone-deep sense of meaninglessness. The terror these individuals eventually face is not the terror of the outside world they feared, but the terror of the void they created within. They look into the mirror and see a stranger, a caricature defined by the negation of possibility. They are victims of their own success in achieving safety. The energy that was meant for exploration, for creation, for the confrontation with the shadow, has become stagnant. This psychic stagnation is the heaviest burden of all. It breeds a simmering envy for those who dared to live, a bitter disdain for the vibrancy they consciously abandoned. They become critics, moralizers, and judges, projecting their internal deadness onto the living world, attempting to pull down those who are climbing out of the pit they themselves willingly jumped into. This state of calcified inertia is the true price of the bargain. Safety guarantees a certain level of comfort, but it annihilates the possibility of the apotheosis, the full realization of the self. Jung insists that the path to individuation, the ultimate purpose of human life, requires the embrace of opposites. You cannot know light without knowing darkness. You cannot know strength without risking weakness. The safe man refuses this duality. He tries to live entirely in the light, which is simply another way of saying he refuses to acknowledge his own shadow, the reservoir of wild, powerful, and necessary potential that he locked away with his fear. And for those who seek to understand this phenomenon deeply, those who are willing to look beyond the superficial explanations of mere laziness or apathy, you are already part of the community willing to face the terrifying truth. I want to know where this confrontation is happening. Where is the intellectual battle for the soul being waged in your life? Tell me which city you are currently watching this from. Let us acknowledge the global scope of this struggle against psychic imprisonment. The ultimate horror for the safe man is the realization that his suffering, which he believed he had avoided, is worse than the suffering of the free man. The free man suffers externally, through loss, challenge, and failure, but his soul is engaged, and his suffering generates meaning. The safe man suffers internally, through flatness, boredom, and emptiness, and his suffering generates nothing but resentment. It is the sterile pain of the cage, and here lies the ultimate tragedy. To attain freedom, one must commit an act of psychological suicide. The individual who chose safety must destroy the very structure that provided him comfort. He must, in the words of Jung, face his shadow and integrate the frightening aspects of his own darkness. This requires admitting that the comfortable life was a lie, that the stability was a masquerade, and that the perceived safety was actually the most profound danger. This moment of admission is truly terrifying because it means accepting total responsibility for the previous choices and for the long, arduous journey ahead. Imagine the decades of self-deception finally crumbling. The man stands on the rubble of his safe life. He is stripped bare, without the collective identity to support him, without the established routine to define him. He is faced with the terrible freedom, which is merely the freedom of standing naked before existence, without predetermined roles or comforting narratives. This is the moment most people retreat back into the ruins of their safety, clinging to the fragments of the illusion rather than stepping into the unknown expanse of true selfhood. This terrifying necessity of confrontation is why freedom is not simply a political concept. It is a profound psychological burden. It demands sustained vigilance, constant self-assessment, and the willingness to endure isolation. The safe man cherishes conformity. The free man understands that conformity is the enemy of the soul. He recognizes that every step toward the authentic self is a step away from the crowd, and this solitude is often misinterpreted as arrogance by those still huddled together in the collective unconscious. The final act of liberation, therefore, is not a grand, aggressive gesture. It is an act of deep humility and sustained persistence. It is the humble admission that one is flawed, incomplete, and fundamentally responsible for carving meaning out of chaos. The safe person looks for systems, rules, and authorities to delegate their existential responsibility. The free person recognizes that the ultimate authority resides within, and that the journey of individuation is the only commandment worth obeying. We must understand that the fear of freedom is ultimately the fear of power. The safe man fears his own internal force, his creativity, his aggression, his profound capacity for both destruction and creation. These raw elements, essential for a full life, are deemed too dangerous and are thus suppressed under the guise of prudence and modesty. But these qualities do not disappear. They are simply internalized and become toxic, leaking out as passive aggression, cynical criticism, and chronic dissatisfaction. When Jung speaks of individuation, he is speaking of becoming whole, of unifying the conscious ego with the unconscious shadow and the collective aspects of the self. This is the only path that leads to genuine strength, the strength that does not need safety as a crutch. The strength of the individuated person is derived from having faced the internal demons and having survived the confrontation with the abyss. This strength is quiet, resilient, and utterly non-negotiable. The tragedy of those who chose safety is that they sought to bypass the necessary suffering of growth. They mistook comfort for peace and stability for existence. And when they reach the end of their lives, they find that the guaranteed peace they purchased was merely the silence of a tomb, and the promised stability was the rigidity of rigor mortis. They wake up at the finish line only to realize they never started the race. The existential ledger is balanced, and the price of avoiding the terror of freedom is the terror of having never truly lived. The safe man's life is merely a preface without a book, a potentiality that was never actualized. The true definition of courage, therefore, is the willingness to abandon the guarantees of safety and step into the fertile uncertainty of the unknown, accepting that failure, pain, and isolation are merely necessary byproducts of a life fully engaged. To choose freedom is to choose the burden of being fully human, to accept the chaos as the raw material of creation, and to affirm that the only true safety is found in the unwavering commitment to one's own unfolding destiny. The path is terrifying. It is lonely. It demands more of you than you believe you have. But the alternative is infinitely worse. The suffocating predictability of a life lived entirely on the margins of potential. The free man accepts terror to gain meaning. The safe man accepts meaninglessness to gain comfort. And in the final analysis, meaning is the only currency that matters. Now is the moment of definitive choice, the point where philosophy becomes action. You have heard the analysis of the burden of freedom. The greatest act of courage is not fighting a battle, but accepting the responsibility for your own existence. This commitment is the shield against the internal void. I want you to plant a marker in the comments right now, declaring your intention to carry this weight, to choose the path of meaning, even if it brings terror. I want you to type the phrase, "I choose the burden." We are here, digging deep, confronting the uncomfortable truths about power, strategy, and the human psyche. If this perspective shifts how you view your comfort zones and the quiet tyrannies of safety, then you are ready for the next level of understanding. Solidify your commitment to this journey of psychological mastery. Subscribe and like this video, joining the community of those who refuse to live small. Do this now. This platform is reserved for those who prioritize truth over comfort. And be warned, the next time we meet, we will peel back another fundamental layer of human interaction. We will examine the forces that truly shape outcomes, revealing the hidden strategy that dictates who succeeds and who merely exists in the shadows. We are going deeper into the architecture of influence, exposing the unspoken rules that determine success, not in the public spectacle, but in the quiet operations of the mind. Do not miss the next step in acquiring the knowledge that fundamentally changes your life.